Okay, we're continuing repairs on this 1992 Honda Accord LX with a 2.2 liter. And what we're doing today is we're going to go ahead and replace the heat shield because we had to pull that off to get to the oxygen sensor. And there was a couple of bolts missing on the heat shield, so we had to find some in our bolt bin, and what we have to do is cut those to size. So the heat shield goes over the little exhaust manifold. It looks like a little header right here. And what we have to do then is clean up the little oil spots that spilled on it so it doesn't smoke and stink up everything once it gets fired up and warmed up. And then we'll go ahead and remove the valve cover gasket after that. And that's this thing up here. And what we need to do to remove this is remove all the hoses going to it, which looks like there is a PCV valve, and then there's a crankcase breather hose, and then we have to remove the plug wire supports, the little guides that hold the plug wires in, and then we take off the nuts that go to the valve cover gasket, which are those four. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, and then remove this little thing right here. And then we'll be able to have that valve cover gasket off, and then we already purchased a new one, and then we'll show you how to install that. So that's what we're getting started on. We already have replaced this bolt right here, which is to the shift down linkage on the transmission. That could give us a reason why it was acting a little bit funny when we brought it home. And then we also replaced the nut that goes to hold the cable onto the starter. So we're done with everything on this side over here so far. You got to make sure to triple check and that everything is together before you button everything back up. So that's what we're doing now. We're going to go ahead and put the heat shield on, clean it up, and then we'll have that together. Then we'll start on the valve cover gasket. This is what it looks like when there's no valve cover on it. Those are all your valves. These right here are your exhaust valves. The ones over here under there are your intake valves. We got the heat shield back on. One little tip I wanted to inform you about is before you install this, you put a little dab of silicone right on each corner of this, that corner, and the ones over there, just to make sure that the valve cover seals. You don't have to put it around the valve cover gasket itself, but just on those little corners, just to make sure it seals. That's one of the tips I picked up throughout having all these Accords. So that's where we're at now. We're getting ready to clean up this surface. And once we clean up that surface, then we'll install the new valve cover gasket. This is what the valve cover looks like when it's off. There's 4 bolts holding it on. These are the little nuts holding it on. Alright, we have the new valve cover gasket installed. You can see that little blue going along the bottom of the valve cover where it connects to the head. And you got to put a little bit of silicone right there just to make sure that those little corners seal. And make sure you torque your valve cover bolts evenly all the way until they snug down. Just go crisscross, 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 crisscross until it snugs evenly. And then you know you have the proper torque on your valve cover gasket. So now we're going to go ahead and install the plugs and go ahead and put the plug wires back on and button up the valve cover, and then we should be done with that. And when we put it back together, you have to make sure that you plug in and hook up everything that you disconnected. This little thing right here, a little ground wire, make sure that's hooked up. PCV hose, right here, PCV valve, make sure that's hooked up. Crankcase breather hose, it's right here. you make sure that's hooked up. When you put your spark plugs back on, make sure you tighten up these little bolts here for the spark plug wire holders. So we now have a brand new valve cover gasket on this 1992 Honda Accord. Doesn't look any different except for the shiny little valve cover bolts. The holders underneath those are brand new, so they kind of look kind of shiny. But we hope that it doesn't leak any oil from this valve cover once we get it running and started and stuff. Pretty much ready to start it and run it. But we're going to have to put the new air filter in. And I kind of think I want to wipe out the throttle body just to make sure that there's no dirt in there. And then we'll be ready to add the transmission fluid, which is straight down there. It's that yellow handle down there. You pull that up, check the dipstick, and it tells you how much transmission fluid you have in this automatic transmission. So yep, all we have to do now is wipe off the throttle body, install the air snorkel, some people call it an arm, put the new air filter in, add transmission fluid, hook up the battery. It should be ready to rock and roll.